Nobody asked us any questions, not even one. They all just sat and listened and nodded as Miss Hamsey murmured what we were saying in Ahmed's ear. It was strange having so many grown-ups sit and listen as if we were them and they were us, but it felt good too. When we had said everything there was to say, Mrs. Sanders nodded and put her hands together. "Well," she said, leaning back in her chair, "I hardly know what to say." She leaned forward and picked up my exercise book with the greatest idea in the world drawn in it. "But what I can say is that Ahmed is very, very lucky to have friends who are so passionate about helping him find his family." Mrs. Khan nodded, and I saw the two police officers nodding too. "Now, just to be clear," said Mrs. Sanders, peering over her glasses at us, "what you did was extremely dangerous, and your plan, or the likes of it, must never ever be attempted again. Do you understand?" We all nodded silently. I could feel my cheeks getting hot and saw Tom's ears instantly turn bright red. "You lied to Mrs. Khan, you left school without permission, and you put yourselves in great danger. Behavior like this would usually lead to temporary suspension from school." Josie gasped and Michael winced. I could hear Tom swallowing nervously, and even Ahmed looked scared. Mrs. Sanders went on, "However, we've spoken with all your parents, and I can understand fully that you thought this was an emergency. So—" I looked up at Mrs. Sanders and could feel everyone doing the same. "In this instance, you will not be suspended." Tom yelped a small "Yes!" and Josie let out a huge puff of air that had been making her cheeks swell, and Michael gave a long sigh. And as soon as Miss Empsey had told him what had happened, Ahmed cheered and clapped. But even though I felt happy too, I couldn't feel fully happy because I still wanted to know something. "And what about Ahmed's family, miss? Has the Queen found them already?" Mrs. Sanders shook her head and slowly leaned forward. "I think you should all know that the Queen, well, there are some things that even she can't do." "But she is the Queen," frowned Tom. "She can do whatever she wants." I could see Ahmed staring at Mrs. Sanders as if she wasn't making any sense to him either. But Mrs. Sanders was shaking her head. "I'm afraid that's not quite true. I'm sure that the Queen would like to try and help Ahmed in some way, but I doubt very much that she'll be allowed to send out extra people to find his family, especially when no one knows where they are." On hearing Mrs. Sanders' words, I felt something hard hit me in the middle of my chest. I wanted to tell her that she was wrong, that the Queen could help anyone if she really wanted to, but even though my mouth opened, I couldn't say any words. I know that may come as a huge disappointment," said Mrs. Sanders, peering over her glasses at us and looking at me the longest. "But Ahmed has lots of people trying to help him find his parents. Though even if they do find them, it may take a long time, months, maybe even years, before they can join him here. That's why he's staying with Miss York for now," she added, nodding at Ahmed's foster mum. We all stayed silent, and even though I didn't want them to, I could feel my eyes beginning to get wet and my nose tickling and something heavy sinking in the pit of my stomach. Everything we had done had been for nothing, and the greatest idea in the world was really the stupidest idea in the world. In fact, it was probably the stupidest idea in the whole universe, and I knew that everyone was thinking it too. "Now," said Mrs. Sanders kindly, "I want to show you something." She took a newspaper from out of her bag and laid it on the desk in front of us. I looked over at Michael and Tom and Josie, but I think they must have all forgotten about the promise we made, because they immediately started to read the paper. So I wiped my eyes and looked at it too. I knew that it had to be okay to break a promise to your mom if your head teacher was telling you to. A huge headline stared up at us from the front page, and alongside it was a large blurry image of me running up to one of the Queen's guards with Tom behind me. I could tell it was me because of my bright blue rucksack, but I couldn't see my face properly at all. The paper looked like this. is Ahmed and how can we help? 9-year-olds storm palace in bid to help refugee boy. The story said that the newspaper was going to run an international appeal to find Ahmed's parents, which made Josie grin and whisper, "See?" This is what it said. Yesterday afternoon saw a centuries-old tradition in disarray when the changing of the guard ceremony was disrupted by two 9-year-old children. Breaking through the barriers, they attempted to give one of Her Majesty's Palace Guards a written note asking the Queen to help them find the family of a refugee boy known only as Ahmed. The decisive actions of these children have served to remind us all of the shameful hesitance and fear which often govern our actions and those of our government. So, who is Ahmed and where is his family? This paper is determined to help us and urges our readers, our leaders and our politicians to do what they can to not only find this young boy's missing family but reunite them here on UK soil. Perhaps it is the actions of these children which will inspire political bodies across the world to finally heed the plight of refugee children everywhere. A fitting testament indeed to a young boy whose story we have yet to learn, made infamous by a daring act of true friendship. We appeal to all of you to not let the brave actions of these children be in vain. Help us find Ahmed's family. After she had finished, Mrs. Khan put the paper down and looked at us with her eyebrows raised. "So, you see," she said, clasping her hands together and placing them under the chin, "all is not lost. Even if the Queen can't do as much as she'd like to, there is a whole world of people who are whispering Ahmed's name and trying to think of how to help him instead." Later that morning, as I sat in lessons, I thought about what Mrs. Sanders had said. I thought about the worldwide whispers being whispered right at that very moment and wondered how long it would take for all of them to reach the Bordergate people and Ahmed's mum and dad too. I had never thought about how loud a whisper can be if there are lots and lots of them. So all that day I whispered, "Help Ahmed," out loud too, whenever I could. So did Tom and Michael and Josie, and whenever we did it together, our whispers made a sound like an ocean.